So what do you get when you pay $89 for a bootleg Twitter made by the Russians? You get a massive data breach. Now, this is exactly what happened to this new Twitter clone called Spoutible, where the company publicly released, by accident, its users' ISP addresses and personal email addresses. So who is Christopher Bouzy, who's created this Spoutible? Well, Christopher Bouzy has a long history of creating bogus websites. For instance, he created this dating website called If Solo, and it was featured on a lot of these anti-scam websites to telling people to be careful when you use it. Also, Christopher Bouzy was into the crypto world, where he allegedly sold these cards and people didn't receive the cards and started calling it a scam because he took their money and didn't give them their cards. Also, Christopher Bouzy has been promoting products seemingly by using multiple bot accounts. As an example, here is some bot accounts promoting his company If Solo. As you can see, all these accounts are tweeting the exact same thing, the exact same day, at the exact same time. And we found hundreds of accounts doing the exact same thing over various projects that Mr. Bouzy has been involved with. So now we move on to Spoutible. See, Spoutible was supposed to be the Twitter killer. Now, it was launched on February 1st and was supposed to be a Twitter alternative. Now, Christopher Bouzy said that Spoutible had some advantages to Twitter: safety and security, diversity, and all this other stuff. And that was one of the main selling points of Spoutible: its security protocols, encrypting people's personal email addresses, phone numbers, and IP addresses. But now we know some of these things were absolutely not true. So now this brings me to Marco. Marco is a Twitter user who looked at the publicly available source code for Spoutible and did a Google search on it to see where it came from. And this is what Marco found. The above search results got me a Russian website which probably offers nulled, illegally offered, website projects. Google Translate, funny enough, called it a Twitter copy. So Marco wanted to determine if Spoutible was really this fake Twitter that was being offered by this Russian website. So here is that website. And to buy this bootleg Twitter cost you about $89. And it allowed you to preview the product live. Marco even found the Russian design team who created this website. Now, could it really be possible that Bouzy was trying to pass off this Russian knockoff of Twitter that cost $89 as a new version of Twitter, as something that can beat Twitter, an $89 Russian program? Well, let's take a look. Here's the loading page for both programs. Here are the hashtag pages. Here's the landing page from the Russian site. Here's the landing page from Spoutible. And here are the menus from both pages. Which one do you think is Spoutible? Which one do you think is the Russian site? Well, if you guessed the Russian site was on the right and Spoutible was on the left, you guessed right. Here they are side by side. Now, here's also the password recovery box. Now, which one do you think is Spoutible? Which one do you think is the Russian site? The Russian site's on the left, Spoutible's on the right. But interestingly to note, the entire box is the same. All the words are the same, everything. Here they are side by side. Now, Marco even went and looked at the source code to see if the source code was identical. And most of it was. It even got to the point where on Spoutible, there was this spelling error where it said passwords do not munch. And if you go to the Russian website and look at its source code, here it says passwords do not munch. Even the spelling errors are the same in both codes. Now, this was found by Farish. So it looked like Spoutible was this $89 code from this Russian website. Crazy. And it seems like it was only $89 to buy. So now let's talk about the data breach. To do that, we have to talk about API. That's Application Programming Interface. Now, all you need to know about APIs is that that's how apps connect together. For instance, if you're using Lyft, there are multiple applications that are used to bring you Lyft. For instance, there's a GPS application. That's one API. There's a payment application. That's a second API. There's a rating application. That's a third API. And those three APIs kind of come together and give you this front-facing piece, which is known as Lyft. And interestingly enough, Christopher Bouzy's other company, Bot Sentinel, depends on Twitter's APIs, which he almost lost because he negligently said that Twitter had more than 5% bots. Now, APIs come in different varieties. First, you have private APIs, one that is only internal. You have partner APIs, like between Christopher Bouzy and Twitter. And then you have public APIs, information that you send out to everyone, and whoever is there to look at it, they look at it. And Spoutible also has APIs. Now, Spoutable's default is that essentially everything would be available in its public API. unless someone changed it. And in that public API, available to everyone, Christopher Bouzy left all of the users' IP addresses and personal emails available to the public. Here it is. Here's a user's email address, which has been redacted, and here's a user's IP address, which also has been redacted, available to the public through the public API. Now, on February 1st, Marco was so concerned, he wrote this thread explaining exactly what was going on, trying to notify Bouzy that he had this massive data hole and that he was making public all of these users' information, their email addresses, their IP addresses. So what did Bouzy do in response? Well, first, Bouzy called Marco a stalker and then doxed him and threatened to call his employer if he didn't stop talking about it. And then, behind the scenes, Bouzy went and fixed the problem. Now, another Twitter user, Farish, noticed that Bouzy hadn't actually fixed the problem. See, Bouzy only fixed the IP address issue, but still, users' personal email addresses were still public through the API. For instance, Ellie Hall, senior reporter of BuzzFeed. Here is her Spoutible account. And as you can see, she's a senior reporter at BuzzFeed News, and she has her public-facing email, elliehall@buzzfeed.com. So here's the public-facing API, and as you can see, senior reporter at BuzzFeed News, where she has her public-facing email. And as you can see, this is the same thing that was in her About page, but her personal email address, which is a Gmail address, was made public through this API. And not only her, but former Labor Secretary Robert Reich. Here is his profile on Spoutible. And again, Berkeley professor, former Secretary of Labor. You can see it in his About section of his profile. And also his personal email address, available in the public domain. And there's also Representative Richie Torres from the Bronx. So Marco was correct. This was a Russian website for about $89. And instead of Bouzy notifying his users that their data was compromised, he doxed Marco and called his job to try to get him fired. And even to this day, Bouzy has not told his users that their IP addresses and personal email addresses were compromised because he made them all public. And this is what happens when you pay $89 for a fake bootleg Twitter made by the Russians. So, what now? Should Bouzy shut down Spoutible? Is Spoutible, just like all the other scams, another Bouzy bucks? Let me know in the comments section. Let me know if you are signed up to Spoutible and if you're concerned about your data. Because right now, if your email address and IP address was on that website, it has been compromised and you should be concerned. My name is Nate the Lawyer, and I'll see you next time. Peace.